Warren, thanks for stopping by. I feel like I've seen you only online. Is this the first? I think it's the first time we met in person.
This is our first in-person meeting, sir. It's still like talking to an old friend.
It's still like talking to an old friend because we have talked before. We've done some work together on our platform, on other stuff, but it's good to see you. Terra firma.
Outstanding to be here, sir.
Have you been? I don't know. This hasn't happened in Baltimore before, has it?
This is my first time in Baltimore, and really
Ever?
with the new licenses, it's kind of a first time in Maryland, really, for the industry. So
Yeah, I used to live in D.C., so Maryland was sort of the backyard, but certainly not for cannabis. And I actually have been, last 420 I was in Maryland for the day, and there are some great dispensaries in Maryland. At that point, obviously, only medical with rec coming, I guess it was July 1st last year. They're selling a lot of cannabis in Maryland.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been picking up speed, right? So, and I'm seeing the big players entering the state as well, so.
Yeah, it's, and from your perspective, looking at Maryland, I have a theory. You've been in lots of states. The faster you get more stores open for rec, the better. Flipping medical directly over to rec or rec plus medical allows the market to, I think, expand more smoothly than what we've seen like in places like New York.
Yep.
And that stabilizes the, I'm talking about from an industry perspective, not necessarily from a social equity perspective, any of that, but like it makes sales go up faster. More people have more access to more cannabis.
They prioritize growers and processors on the front end, right? Yeah. So whereas New Jersey, they had such limited canopy, it was the first movers in the ATCs that really got the big play to expand. This way, you're going to see a lot of new cool brands open up and hopefully meet demand as these shops are starting to get really hungry and ramp up. So it's great.
It's really something to watch, of course, but also I feel like there's 20-something case studies to do about what states are doing what. And I think I just saw something online that like cutting and pasting doesn't work. Right? Like every state is unique, of course, but then I was just looking at Minnesota is having this issue where they want to open dispensaries, I guess, soonish, whenever that may be, but they haven't wanted to give licenses to start cultivating early, which doesn't make any sense, right? Like there's this push and pull about when people start cultivating versus when stores are open. We've even seen it in New York where there's not enough cannabis, or there's too much cannabis to sell in too few stores, and in Connecticut right next door, too many stores to sell too little cannabis. It's like...
Well, and having just come from Minnesota last week, speaking at
Lucky
an event
Leaf?
there, Lucky
Leaf. Yeah,
and so really that's going to be an interesting market just because they have on-site consumption, they have events, and there's really a lot of enthusiasm in that market, right? So that's where, like, it's going to be an interesting one to watch, but they have a lot of low-dose hemp and Delta-9 stuff happening too, which, as we know, kind of muddies the market and sort of, depletes the market share for bigger licensed operators.
Yeah,
so,
and beverages have been huge there.
They're
huge. Available in like traditional wine shops, and restaurants. It's really...
And they're going to open up the national market for that as well. So California, Colorado, even East Coast operators are going to start shipping their hemp-infused products back to Minnesota. So again, it's going to be a free-for-all in the initial licensing.
Yeah, a free-for-all in the initial licensing, that for sure. When you look at different states, like when you look at the initial regs that come out of like Maryland, and new licenses coming out of Maryland, or whether it's New York, any market that you guys work in and look at, are there some things you see and just scratch your head, you're like, oh no, that's just such a bad idea, just because you've seen it in so many places, or you see something new and say, wow, that I hadn't thought of it that way, or that is how you would do it if you looked at everything that came before, this is a really good approach.
So the lottery is always a catch-22, right, to where you're going to wind up with a suit, somebody wins it, somebody who is deserving did not,
right.
You're going to wind up having to issue a few extra licenses. But at the same time, you've sort of, limited how far those lawsuits can go as opposed to social equity plays where then you're definitely going to get sued. And when you have state money going to these social equity applicants, there's even more economic incentive to make that suit happen.
Right.
So this is where, the lottery, it kind of throttles the growth, but at the same time, it protects those that get in.
Right. And we've seen, and I come from it, I live in Toronto, I was saying, and we've seen, I guess we're at the other end of it, where we're seeing, we saw this huge ramp up, certainly during COVID, of new dispensaries opening during COVID, but then since then as well. And where I live in Toronto, there's pockets you can be, and then there's lots right there. And so those ones are flipping over, closing all of that. But to my point is like, it right sizes the industry starting big and then it right-sizes the industry as opposed to trying to right-size the industry incrementally as you go, I guess. But no approach is perfect so far.
When you do the California license everyone that wants in, you just have a ton of failure, right? And so this is where you've kind of protected these lottery winners to get on their feet and get running. Not all of them are going to succeed. Some of these licenses are going to get sold, but at least they have a better runway.
Yeah.
Whereas when you license everyone, it's some people are going to, win and some are going to lose, and there's just so much flux in the market that you see Cali, they had a decrease in revenue sales from 2023 to 24.
Right. First time.
Because of battling the illicit market, right? So this is where slower expansion, safer for these businesses.
Right. Thinking about that, thinking about that and specific to Maryland, obviously had a big medical market and a pretty big infrastructure, at least it seemed to me, of growers and processors, manufacturers and dispensary owners, operators. And how has that played out from your perspective with new licenses coming online? And what do you expect we'll be talking about when we come to NECANN next year at the same time? Like, do you think there's enough cannabis to fill the market, the demand to fill the new stores, like all of those things? How do you see that equilibrium playing out in Maryland?
I still see there's room in the market, right? I'm seeing a lot of big MSOs, a lot of larger brands that are established are pretty much predominating the shelves. So this is where people love new stuff, and they love new products, and they love something that can fill a niche that hasn't been filled before. So I see a lot of opportunity here. I do think that product diversification is going to be a thing. We need more rosin on the shelves. We need more top shelf indoor. We need more full sun outdoor and affordable options. So I still see room for Maryland to develop and sort of become more like the mature markets of Massachusetts, Colorado, or Cali.
Yeah, it's interesting to think about it like that. And it's also, no state operates in a vacuum either, right? DC has pretty unique cannabis laws. They have I-71 dispensaries, they have medical dispensaries, they want to legalize, the Congress won't let them. Like, there's lots going on. And then, also on the border of Virginia, the governor just vetoed adult use, but that's a ticking, that's just time ticking. It is an interesting thing to think about these states that are close together, which is not what happened on the West Coast, but states that are close together, they can't do, unbelievable taxation that's out of line with everybody else. They can't do regulations, or else people just cross borders and buy cannabis. And I wonder how much that factors into people applying for licenses, like on board near the border of Virginia, right? Because that's maybe a great license for the next 3 years, but whatever, Virginia comes online. Like all of those things, and like, how do you think about that when you talk to clients? Are they thinking about it 1, 2, 3, and 4 years down the road, or are they like getting to day one?
I think we all worry about day one, right? Because really, if you're not profitable in your first year, you're not going to make it out, right? So this is where you're going to be worried about DC and the gifting market, which they're saying now the gifters have a 2-year runway. So the DC market's starting to fall apart, and that's where, if I were in Maryland, I would be worried about my neighbors next door just walking over there for cheaper unlicensed cannabis, right?
Yeah.
On that point, though, I would try to strategize myself from a Maryland perspective of being clean, lab tested, and then trying to get production up to get the price points down to actually compete with the illicit market.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes good sense. And then you'll have Virginia and try to figure it all out again.
It'll be a whole other rigmarole.
It's a whole other rigmarole. And actually I want to talk about that because we talked about getting to day one and you talked about profitability in year one. And are you seeing now more operators realizing that it's not an easy business to be in? Like, it's hard to get the license, that's one thing, but it is also a hard and difficult and competitive market to be in. And we see it certainly in Canada, where some are failing already, or not already, but 3-4 years in. But it's a very challenging market to operate in, with the competition, with the regulation, with the falling price of product, which inevitably happens. And retail's hard. You can take out cannabis and retail's hard. Convenience stores are hard, liquor stores are hard, restaurants are hard, like all those things that sort of are there's some parts of it in cannabis. Like, can we train people better before day one to get to day 365 and, I don't know, 7, whatever?
There's definitely a need in the industry for training, and I would say business planning, it's something Cannaspire does. It's something we often do with our clients, business development ahead of time. it goes into everything. It's how you get your investors. It's what niche in the market you're going to be fulfilling. It's what scale you want to hit. It's even which license types or combinations you're going to pursue and what states you want to go into as you grow over time. I would say Florida's a good example where like you're seeing the price of a license wholesale slowly falling. 2 years ago, it was $25 million to purchase one. 6 months ago, it was $16 million. Now it's $11 million. So it's slowly getting down, and these are from operators that basically, one, built a facility, grew a couple clones, and said, we're never going to make it and can't do this. So to your point of high rate of failure, Florida is one of the wealthiest cannabis markets in the nation, number 4 with just medical.
Right.
And that's one of the things where if you can't make it there with a captive audience, that really lets you know, regulation, packaging, labeling, the OMMU, coming down on every advertising thing that you put out. It's really heavy. And then you add taxes and 280E, which who knows, it could change soon.
Yeah.
It might be a while, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. Thinking about that, because you live in Florida, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
I was just in Florida. We were not seeing each other, but I was at my parents' place, and both exits of their community they live in, which is 50 or maybe even 60 plus, dispensaries on both sides, and doctors to help you, get authorized and all those things. And there's an election in November. It's whether that is successful or not, we will see. But seems first of all, it's a huge market. 800,000 patients is huge. I don't know. Did any state ever get to 800,000 other than Florida?
I think they're the biggest. Yeah.
I know Maryland was. Michigan was like 300 something thousand,
right,
which seemed huge at the time
for
a state the size of Michigan. But 800,000 is a lot, and there's a ton of tourists and 20 million people. It seems poised. Whether the election is successful in November or some other time, it seems poised to be among the biggest cannabis markets in the world, certainly in the States.
We're really hoping that things will flip direct in November. Our governor just came out today saying that he's going to fight it on the ballot for November because
that might help it.
Maybe it causes liberals to turn out and vote against Donald Trump. He just had a meeting with Donald Trump, and I'm not putting any political opinions out there on this, but this is why he's fighting, right? So this is one of those things where you're going to have to hurry up and wait with Florida. We also need a supermajority of over 60% to pass it, which we have the support. We're one of the strongest cannabis supporting, from the sales, you can see that, and there will easily be another 5 million adult patients that'll walk in from the local population, plus all the tourists. We could be number 2 or number 3 in the nation for sales, especially without any home cultivation like Cali or Colorado, especially without any horizontal licensing plays. It'll be the most profitable market to be in, and still probably one of the tightest and hardest to operate in.
All those things can be true all at the same time. Warren, I appreciate you making time today. How are you finding the show so far? We're first thing in the morning on the first day, but pretty good.
Yeah, it's been productive. We're eager to see what's going to roll out in the next wave of licensing here in Maryland, and we're really hopeful to help some of these emerging licensees get into the industry, do their social equity work, get their operations plans, business plans well planned out so that they can win this license and rock and roll.
Well, you're the right person to talk to. I appreciate it. Warren, thanks so much.
Such a pleasure, Jay.